So coming soon to recently cancelled items. We've got Hoani Barker here. Hoani's a really good mate of mine. We've known each other for a few years. I've done a lot of work with Hoani's parents over the years. They sort of, to some degree, took me under their wing when I was going through a bit of a growth phase in the sort of earlier stages of my business. We would travel on weekends and go all around Australia, setting up little property investment expos, which was a hell of a lot of fun. So I've got a lot of respect for Hoani's parents. In fact, your entire family, I'm hugely fond of. We even spent some time together in a marae.
Indeed.
That was interesting.
That's a cultural, 101 right there.
And that was before I found out that I was 18% Maori.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
I did, yeah.
You heard that I did one of those ancestry saliva tests, which does all your DNA, and I was just like, man, after the boring UK, Northwest European dominance in my heritage, the next biggest thing after that was 18% Maori. I'm thinking, this skinny, blue-eyed white guy?
That's quite a high percentage, actually. It's probably almost what I would be, I would imagine.
Well, when I texted, your mum was the first one I texted. I texted Hannah and I said, Hannah, guess what? I just found out that I'm like 18% Maori. And her reply was, you're blacker than me, cuz.
Yeah. So true. That's funny.
Cool. So when I first wrote this book, 11 Unpopular Reasons Why I'm Rich and You're Not, Stories and Lessons from My Unlikely Success, I sent the final polished product out to a very few, like a small number of people whose opinions and insights I knew I would value, and you were one of those people. And you actually read the book pretty quickly, didn't you? You were saying before that you read it in what, 1 week?
Yeah, about a week. I mean, you reached out to us, said you had a book. My initial feeling was, holy shit, what can't this guy do? And, if my friend is going to go through all the effort to create something like this, I'm definitely going to give you whatever I can in terms of, reading it, providing some feedback. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed every second of it, in fact. Very interesting book. There was a lot of things I could relate to being from the Gold Coast, and obviously, growing up in my, I should say, formative years through the 20s and early 30s.
Your ratbag years.
Yeah, the ratbag years.
Yeah.
Those were some of the times when I think you were around. Like, you were working with my parents, going away on these business trips and, making money. And it was something that I really kind of, I looked up to at that time, because we're around the same age, and I spent the first couple of years of my adult life doing what I believe you are trying to do, which is spend more time playing music live and, not really having to worry about finances, looking after a family, looking after a business, looking after employees. And kind of me being on that end of the spectrum, that being not really giving a shit about what I was doing other than enjoying my life. It was really good to see someone who was going out there and getting it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first met you, it was, I believe it was the Christmas party up in the penthouse of the Oracle building in Broadbeach. And the first thing that we spoke about was music, because I noticed that you had that tattoo, and I was just like, all right, you're obviously a muso. And I knew, because your mum's a bit of a musician as well. She can sing and she can play, the Maori chords on the guitar and the ukulele and belt out a few tunes. So I knew your mum was somewhat musical, and then I found out that you and your brother Zach are also, like amazing musicians in your own right. So that was probably the thing that we first connected on.
Yeah, sure.
I would think was our mutual love of music. And for a while, it was your career, wasn't it? You were actually, that was right. Your primary job. Yes. was doing gigs.
Yep, for about 4 years, my brother and I we lived off playing music live. And, there was 6 of us in the band, so as you can imagine, earning little money and then dividing it by 6 people is, we were
Fuck
living,
all divided by 6.
Yeah, legit. What we were really playing for was the feeling that you get when you perform, and you get that affirmation from people who enjoy your music, and it was a great, I think it's something that everyone wants to experience, and we were lucky enough to be in a position to just say, fuck it, let's do this, see how it goes, until obviously reality hits, and more things come, like getting married and having kids, and these things require some kind of a foundation, some stability.
That's right. So, and we'll get to this section in my book because that's sort of more towards the end there. But I gave myself, a sort of a precondition to pursuing my childhood dreams of becoming a rock star, and that was step 1, get rich. Step 2, become a rock star, because being a broke and failed musician when you are young is cute, and you've got the time to bounce back and sort your life out basically. But the way I see it, if you are a broke and failed musician when you're old, in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or even beyond, and your childhood dreams start basically becoming at the detriment of the people who depend on you, namely your wife and kids, that was never going to be my path. Yeah,
for sure. You don't even have to be old to get to the point where you realize this is actually the way we were doing it was actually a very selfish endeavor.
Life is selfish though, my friend, and I think the moment we start to accept that humans are self-interested, and that we do everything for ourselves, I think that's a very important realization to get to, because you can be self-interested whilst also making the world a better place and making other people's lives better as well. In fact, I posit that you need to firstly prioritize yourself. You need to enrich yourself before you actually can enrich others. Richness is a very, very, I won't say self-centered journey, but it is a very selfish journey, in that you need to make your own wildest dreams come true first before you can have an impact on somebody else.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of truth to that. And I think, for me, thinking that way was namely because I didn't have the means to, achieve some of those other goals that I'd had with my partner, who had been with me for, 8, almost 10 years at the time. I'd already really entered into a partnership, and that partnership, we came to learn, is actually something that needs to be, or should be done really together.
Yeah.
And when we kind of looked at the fact that I was living my best life, traveling around the country, earning, beers and board for payment, that wasn't really going to contribute to what we wanted to as a partnership.
But man, you wouldn't change anything too.
Not at all. And in fact, I would recommend people do that. Like,
fuck yeah.
Do it young, do it when you can. Like, one of the things I always had in my mind, like you say, is I had time to make mistakes, and I had time to then correct them and then go on to do other things, which I don't think I could handle now, touring and traveling to the extent that we did then, and getting like anywhere near the same enjoyment or reward.
Because it's not just about you anymore.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, you've got 2 daughters, and a wife, obviously, and every decision that you make during every waking hour of the day is for you, but it's also for them as well.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I think, reading your book, people can achieve that financial security if they do it right early, to then, flip it, like you say, maybe get yourself in a position where you're financially secure to look after, you and yours. And then really, like, the world is your oyster.
That's right. You got to, I call it solving the money problem. You got to just grind, and you've got to make it your fucking mission, your 24-hour mission, to solve the money problem as early as you possibly can in this life, because then once you hit that number, you can then start hitting other numbers as well, which we address quite late in the book, so we won't skip over that. So you read the book very quickly. You read it in a week, and even during that week, you were sending me messages on Facebook Messenger, and you're like, man, I just read this chapter. I love it. I love this part here. One of the first observations that you made about the book, which I thought was a really cool observation, is that Bryce, the way you've described richness is, to me, very similar to Stoicism. And I was like, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I never put it that way, but to me, Stoicism is one of the main ingredients of richness. So yeah, expand on that.
Yeah, so I guess, as I mentioned, I was asked by you to read the book, and I think Courtney actually read the message first, and she read the title out to me, and I immediately I laughed because...
You're like, that's so fucking Bryce.
It's brash. I mean, it's in your face. It's, yes, it's so Bryce. And, I found myself immediately kind of thinking, oh, fuck, am I rich or am I not rich? I'm in the top 5% income earners in the country, and,
probably the world.
Yeah, potentially the world. And my wife and I, we've got a really nice life. She's probably closer to the top 3 to 1%. She's the chief financial officer of our company. So, she's got a great income. I have a great income. We have a house, and we have beautiful kids, and we send them to private schools. But, yes, that is a lot to have, but it is not, I guess, it's not the level of richness, I guess, one would expect, which is, in my mind, to be able to essentially work or not work if I wanted to, I mean,
and that's a very important distinction you've made there, because you're saying, yeah, I'm in the top sort of 5% of income earners, Australia or worldwide. My wife's in the top, 1 to 3%. But you had to actually second guess yourself when you were asking the question, am I rich? Like, statistically, you are fucking rich. You're like rich by the definitions that our society is that normally associates with richness. But you weren't quite sure.
Yes. And I think that's something that everyone who is exposed to the title of the book is going to ask themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
The exact reaction that I want to elicit people when they read the title of the book is I want them to say, fuck you, Bryce. Yeah. You're saying you're rich and I'm not. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I want to prove you wrong.
Yeah, like that. I think there's a bit of...
How dare you call me poor?
It definitely incites like a feeling for sure, and different feelings with different people. Some people I can see immediately put off and just think, oh, this guy's a cunt. I don't want anything to do with it. But then, it's enough for you to pick up the book and be intrigued to ask the question, well, am I rich or am I not? And, I said to you earlier, everyone who I've told the title to, I love seeing the reaction on their faces. And it's generally like a shock or surprise, and maybe a little bit of, a feeling
bit of self-reflection.
Yes, definitely that. Self-reflection, maybe a little bit of inadequacy. But I think in terms of the book title, one of my questions to you today was going to be why not 11 ways you can go from being poor to being rich, or something a little bit more amenable?
Well, we did obsess over the title. The title went through a few iterations, and my editor actually pleaded with me to change the original title, because the original title was 11 Unpopular Reasons Why I'm Rich and You're Poor.
Okay.
And then the subtitle was The Abandoned Wisdom of Rich Men. And he said, first of all, you are not implying, you are calling the reader poor, which is different to saying you're not rich.
Mm-hmm.
Calling someone poor is not the same as saying you're not rich.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, fair enough. He's like, it's already audacious enough, the title. You don't want to really drive people away. And then the abandoned wisdom of rich men. That's actually not really what the book's about. And he suggested to change it to, you know, stories and lessons from my unlikely success, because that's ultimately what this book is. It's my story. It's the challenges and triumphs that I endured at a fairly early age in adulthood, challenges that most people will never go through, and what I learned from that. I said, yeah, well, that makes a lot more sense than the original title. So we went with that. And then, so you started, you know, I think you showed, I mean, I've got a lot of just really lovely messages from a lot of people. They've read the book. I've even got 63-year-old men now going out cycling every day, doing 30 Ks on the bike, even though they're sore and they're tired and they don't want to, after reading my book. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, that's sick. You know, inspiring people to squeeze a bit more out of themselves. That's great. But the thing I loved about your messages was that you actually, you really read into it, and you really sort of like, I can tell that you thought about it, and the cogs were turning in your own mind. And then I just had this idea. I'm like, mate, why don't you interview me? Why don't you come in and we can set up the cameras, and you can just ask me some questions about it, expand on a few things, even challenge me if you think some of my ideas are defective, completely unscripted thing. And then you were just like, fuck yeah, I would love to do that. So that's why we're here.
Yes, and thank you for inviting me, because like I said, I read the book. I've read quite a lot of self-help books over the years. I've always been kind of a person continually trying to improve myself, the way I think. At the end of the day, like, how much more value can I provide to my family? And if that's by improving myself and my own abilities, then, you know, I would be remiss not to. So I would actually put this book in those kind of the same tier as, you know, a Tim Ferriss or a Richard Rumelt, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. Many of the kind of the lessons that I've learnt and I take forward, like I mentioned too, I think a lot of what you explain in here is the characteristics of a rich man is actually like what Stoics would call a good man, or philosophers would call a good man. That is being, yes, concerned with yourself and you know, your ability to secure your interests, but also kind of adding value to society in a way that is more so than it would if you were to just kind of mosey along and, you know, do the popular thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting take, and I think a lot of the ideas in here are clearly controversial, although they shouldn't be. I don't think they should be controversial, but they are in this day and age, which is another reason why I felt like, excited to be a part of this discussion, because they are ideas and concepts that are very pervasive in our society now, and very polarizing between, you know, not just political parties, but also between family members and friends. They're topics and discussion points that are really kind of defining the age in which we live. And, you know, it's concerning, it's interesting, it's baffling, and I hope we can maybe get to some gems through this discussion.
Absolutely. I mean, and what you've touched on there is spot on. And the reason I wrote this book is because I had all of these ideas that I've had to learn to reject. So I've lived as a poor man, and I've also lived as a rich man in the way that I've described it in this book. And I know through experience that there are ideas that if you think this way, it will result in certain failure every time, guaranteed. You think this way, you will fail. Your life will suck. It will never get better. You will pretend that everything's okay, but ultimately you're going to regress into oblivion if you think this way. And then by thinking the complete opposite of these ideas, if you reject that idea in favor of its polar opposite, you will grow rich beyond your wildest imaginations. Guaranteed. 100%. So for simple characters like me, I mean, I don't think anyone's simple at the end of the day. We're all complex creatures. I like it when there's a sort of like a red pill, blue pill scenario in front of me, where I've got one idea leading to one outcome and another idea leading to another outcome. And because I'm a simple man, I just think, okay, well, how should I think? What is the story that I need to tell myself in order to get the most out of myself? And what is the story that, like, what are the ideas that I need to reject in order to stop going down these paths to oblivion? Because I've been on a path to oblivion before, which we cover off fairly early in this book. I had all the toxic ideas that I talk about in this book. And I just think that these ideas, these are the stories that you tell yourself. You change the story, you change your life.
Yeah, and see, and that is very much a stoic way of looking at the world. So, I mean, generally speaking, Marcus Aurelius, for example, argues or posits that we really only have like a very small sphere of what we can control.
Mm-hmm.
And our body doesn't even fit in that sphere because, as you know, people can get sick and outside of their control. But what they can control 100% is their mind. And, you know, true happiness will come when you can, I guess, lower your expectations to understand that, you know, your perception of something is really what's making you either depressed or extremely happy. But that switch can be flipped like at your whim, basically.
It can be. And a lot of people think they've got no control over their own thoughts and their own ideas. I posit otherwise. And I think we all have a choice. Yes, it is hard. It is so hard to break the destructive thought pathogens that are keeping you on a suicide mission to oblivion. It's the hardest fucking thing you ever have to do, because we've got these neural networks in our brains that are just constantly firing and misfiring. But the more you think in a particular way, the more you associate a certain input with a certain output, the more that those neural networks strengthen over time. Those networks are fucking hard to break. They are so hard to break, but you can break them. You can. You just need to consider alternative ideas. And you're not going to get it right overnight. You just won't. It will just, it takes people a lifetime to either reject an idea or to embrace a new idea. But the stronger those networks are, the harder it is to break that cycle. So I have found that a really good way to live is to be constantly, at least considering off-ramps to these neural highways we've got. Just staying off autopilot.
I was kind of, I was intrigued by the way you started the book, because you really do. It seems like it starts out as an open critique of what I would say is a result of postmodernism, and that is like where we find ourselves now with wokeism, or whatever the woke term is, like woke thinking, right? And you touch on it in the beginning, and I mean, a lot of the concepts in there, in and around, people seeking more equality through social justice, and people kind of feeling as though they need to attach to a subgroup who might be disadvantaged in some way, and then fight tooth and nail as if they were part of that subgroup. So I think it'd be, we should go into maybe your philosophy in and around like how that kind of woke mentality is impacting and affecting people today, and maybe stopping them from achieving, as you posit, financial freedom.
Well, I think wokeness is the so in life you can have safety or you can have freedom. You cannot have both. You simply can't, because the moment you go for safety, you have to give up your freedom. And if you want to be free and if you want to be on discovery mode and you want to explore, it's fraught with danger. So you have to choose. You have to choose safety or freedom. Woke culture is safe because it's popular, because you are not going to be cancelled or ostracized, or made to be unpopular if you subscribe to woke propaganda. Now, to be clear, what I mean by wokeness is there's a lot of people talk about wokeness, but they don't actually define it. And I'm pretty clear with what I think wokeness is. To me, wokeness is sorry for existing. And to be more specific, wokeness is the delusion that our societies remain to be systemically racist, homophobic, patriarchal, misogynistic, and that we oppress minorities. We do not live in that society anymore. In fact, it has gone the other way around now, where through full-scale systemic deployment of DIE policies, diversity, inclusion, and equity policies, which expressly and proudly deny opportunity to straight white males mostly, in that there are no corporate policies or no governmental policies anywhere that will give more opportunity to straight white males, only less. So there's the social definition of wokeness. Woke ideology also extends to, and keep in mind that wokeness is sorry for existing, to the mandating of experimental vaccines at a governmental level and also at a corporate level in many situations. The denial of informed medical consent. If you don't take this injection, you are fired. Again, through the coronavirus pandemic, people stopped looking at each other as people, but as potential coronavirus carriers. And it was the forefront of the human psyche for at least 2 or 3 years. And we're starting to come off the end of that now, which is great. But again, it was sorry for existing. And then, of course, the big one that makes me very unpopular in many circles is that I believe the climate agenda is the biggest scientific fraud in history. That human carbon emissions are nuking the planet to the point of causing our mass extinction. And this is despite the fact that there is absolutely no historical correlation between atmospheric carbon, and average global temperatures. None. We've had high carbon, high temperatures, low carbon, low temperatures, high carbon, low temperatures, and everything in between. There is no historical correlation there. And again, it's sorry for existing. Sorry I exist. Sorry I emit carbon. Sorry I just, I live in a post-industrialized world. And sorry for all the, poorer countries out there who are emitting carbon to get themselves out of poverty, because the only way that a country can get themselves out of poverty is to have cheap and reliable electricity. So, to me, wokeness can be summarized as sorry for existing. And what does this have to do with richness? Everything. Because the moment you start living your life with this whole sorry for existing mentality, no one will want to work with you. No one will want to do business with you. They will politely agree with you when you start crapping on about, advocating for mandatory injections for CO2 emissions reduction targets, and you start, agreeing that our societies are rife with racism, which I don't believe they are anymore. They used to be, but not anymore. People may silently agree with you or not, but they will not respect you. If you walk around, if you prioritize social discourse in favor of excellence, you will regress into oblivion. And I see that as the big divider in people. You think about all the people that you admire, all the very successful people in this world. And these successful people may consist of entrepreneurs, CEOs, politicians, media personalities, authors, podcasters, you name it. All the people that you admire in this world, they did not get where they were from virtue signaling. They built something, they created something, they focused their intention on something to create the world a better place, to create profit, to create status and prestige. They didn't get where they were from being woke. They got where they were from staying focused on a truly virtuous mission. And I believe you can only stay focused on a virtuous mission if you do not feel sorry for existing.
Kind of what's the extinctionist kind of mindset that the world would be better off without humans on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm also conflicted about how I see these kind of social justice causes because, I'm part Indigenous New Zealander, right? Like I'm part
I am too.
And as we found out today, you are too. But and I'm just using my own experience, right?
But that should not define something.
No, it shouldn't, and it doesn't. Like I don't define myself as, 18% married. But I also haven't felt like I've been held back in any way, shape, or form to achieve what I've been able to achieve in my life. You hear about all of these systemic, like you say, racism, patriarchy,
sexism,
all of it. Like, I mean, it exists to a degree, but we're also, as you say, we're
to a degree, yes, but I think it's anomalous now. It's no longer systemic. The woke wants you to believe that it's systemic. It's still there's people out there that are fucking racist, homophobic, wankers. Like there are some horrible, horrible people out there. Always has been, always will. But they are no longer representative of our broader society.
Yes. And I guess the point I was trying to get to is that do we, why should we focus on something that might not be an issue, like in our immediate lives? Like a lot of my friends who do kind of subscribe to that, the woke mindset, feel compelled to stand up for injustices within subgroups that they're not a part of. And while I think that's empathetic, I also think it's it feels a little manipulative, and I don't know why, but it just, when the news is telling us all of these, the news is setting an agenda, even the politicians, like they're setting agendas that are in and around this, and I really wonder, what is the end goal here? Like, are we going to newt all males so that they lose their
toxic
testosterone?
Masculinity?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, there's certain facts in nature that I feel we're trying to kind of
override.
Yeah. You can't just undo millions of years of evolution with by changing the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, and we were just talking before about before we started rolling about moral zeitgeist, and that we burnt witches as early as 300 years ago. When I say we, I mean societies burnt people alive in public while the public cheered on, their crime was not agreeing with the orthodoxy and offering an alternative idea. 200 years ago, there was slavery, and the average person, I don't know what the average person thought of it, but the fact that it was legal and socially acceptable to own slaves, it was like, these ideas by modern standards are fucked up. They're fucked up. And how did we eradicate these ideas? Well, I believe in this. I believe in the zeitgeist. I believe that there is, and zeitgeist is, I think it's a German word that means the ghost of time. That over time we form new levels of morality, which do, on average, get better and fairer, more equitable. But this idea with wokeness is that they're trying to, it's revenge. It's revenge. I really like the first wave equal rights activists, like the Martin Luther Kings of the world. They didn't want revenge. They just wanted equality, like equality of opportunity. They wanted everyone to be on the same playing field. They were pushing towards a, colorblind society that was free of racism, sexism, homophobia, that everyone's, has equal footing to play with. But right now we're at sort of third wave, where it's no longer good enough just to give everyone the equal opportunity. It's fucking revenge time. And these people that really had nothing to do with the systemic, racism and misogynism and all these historical evils that society's had. People these days, we don't live like that anymore. That's savage by comparison. It's fucked up. But now it's like the woke is on a rampage to punish us for the crimes of our forefathers. It's not right.
Do you also, because I also get the feeling that we've kind of peaked, wokeness has peaked. I hope that we're kind of now in this position where people who are of my ilk, maybe centre, left-leaning politically and economically, abandoned that extreme side of wokeness. I think that, what was that diversity index you mentioned on corporations?
I call it DIE policies. The correct order of the acronym is DIE. I rearrange it because of my thoughts on it. Diversity, inclusion, and equity policies, DIE policies.
Yeah, so essentially that is, hiring based on criteria that isn't really conducive to achieving the goal, which is being the most productive and, exerting the most value, which is what a corporation should be focusing on, right? Instead, you're looking at, let's hire Hoani because he's a Maori, and not hire the 10 other applicants who are better at doing their job than I am. Exactly.
And and thanks for steering the conversation back to exactly what's in the book, because I posit that if you want to be rich, the first idea you need to reject is wokeness. And beyond that, it's beyond wokeness. The first idea that you need to reject is that all men are created equal. To me, the idea that all men are created equal is the most dangerous and destructive idea ever imagined by man. And the reason why it is so dangerous and destructive, because it is the gateway to socialism. And every socialistic regime in history, bar none, has experienced worse living standards, more conflict, not less, but more conflict, more poorness, more misery, and basically just complete social destruction. And it all starts from, the Marxist way of thinking that we all ought to be the same. Humans ought not to be the same. We are unequal. And I don't want to live in a world where everyone is the same. I want people to be unequal. I want us to have differences in the way we look, differences in the way we think, differences in our views in our values that we hold truest in our heart. I don't want to live in a sexless, genderless, androgynous society that the woke seems to want is steering us towards, humans are fascinatingly unequal, and that's what makes life interesting. So yeah, the first idea that you need to reject is that people are or ought to be equal. And in fact, I think the moment you reject that idea, the tyranny of social discourse fades away and wonderful things start to happen in your life. When you just exist in the merciless dance of Mother Nature, you will achieve amazing things because you don't have these social narratives weighing you down all the time.
It's an excellent way to put it. And I think it would resonate with a lot of people today. As we mentioned, these are topics that are front of mind. They're dividing social circles, families, political parties. So I think it was very fitting for you to start the book out with that.
It was also for strategic reasons as well, because I really wanted to hit hard early in the book. I really wanted people to read the book and just go, holy fuck, all right, here we go. I mean, let's get into it.
If the title wasn't a hook, then that definitely was. So that kind of leads us well, I think, into the next, I think, logical question, which is like, how do you define a rich man?
That's an excellent question. So the Oxford Dictionary defines rich as having a lot of money or property. And the first thing that my book does is it basically, I say that whoever authorized that definition at Oxford should be fired, because that is a terrible definition. And it's not because I disagree with it, it's just a really flimsy and undefined phrase. The term a lot. What like a lot of money or property? If you're...
That's not measurable?
I mean, if you've got a net wealth of minus 200,000 like I used to, a lot of wealth by comparison was having nothing. So it's relative. Yep. And it just to me, it's just a very terrible way of defining the word rich. So the first thing that my book attempts to do is to redefine what it means to be rich. And richness goes far beyond a financial portfolio or business success. But the true irony is, if you start defining richness in terms of richness of character, the money actually follows you. The moment you actually start to focus on yourself and your character and just trying to be the best possible version of yourself, constantly squeezing more out of yourself, your business and investment performance will follow suit. It just happens. Why do you think all these really, really rich people out there, why are they still working?
I would imagine there's the reason that they're rich is because they had such a strong work ethic.
Strong work ethic, yes, but they're on a mission. These people are, they've got more money than they could ever spend in their life. They hit the financial number of hitting, what the dictionary defines to be rich a long time ago, yet they are constantly pushing for more. To me, that's real richness. Richness is not the size of your bank account. It's not the size of your investment portfolio. It's not how profitable your business is. Richness is having a truly virtuous mission and making every waking hour of your life in pursuit of that mission. But the mission does not necessarily need to be about your business. It could be a range of things. Yeah, you could be on a mission to become a better father. You could be on a mission to lose a little bit of weight. You could be on a mission to run a marathon, for instance. There are many virtuous missions in this life, and you should have multiple missions. You should never stay fixated on one goal, because the moment you stay fixated on one goal, every other aspect of your life deteriorates. And we see this time and time again, especially with financially successful people. I go to industry conferences all the time, and I look around at the sea of, ultra successful financial planners out there that have got, really big kick-ass businesses, but they are fat, they've got pasty white skin, poor posture, they're anxious, they're depressed, they're alcoholics, they've got a terrible diet, but according to the Oxford Dictionary, they're rich. These guys aren't rich. They may have hit the financial number, but they have not hit other numbers which are at least of equal importance. So, to me, richness is not a financial portfolio. It's having the ability to replace defective ideas when they no longer serve your mission.
And you do go into detail about how you define being rich, both from a financial and from a character perspective, which I thought was interesting flip on the idea and the question, like what makes someone rich. And you're right, because we always think of like our life is rich, not just in monetary sense, but in the relationships that we have and the families that we're blessed to be born into or whatever it might be. But in reading through, as you mentioned before, and reading through a lot of those characteristics, they do resonate with the Stoic philosophy and the idea that if you look after yourself first, then you can look after others. And
absolutely. And being rich is it's not a static point in time. It's a process. Like you can't just be, you can't just be rich for a certain period of time. Richness is the journey. It's the perpetual journey. It is the journey to create surplus and then use the surplus to make a better place. To make the world a better place. You may achieve richness of wealth and then sit on it for nobody else's benefit other than yourself, or you may squander it in the manner that poor people do when they come into money. But true richness is being able to use that capital, in whatever form it comes. Capital could come in the form of money, it could come in the form of knowledge, it could come in the form of ideas. It's about the utilization of that capital to firstly make your own dreams come true and then help others realize their goals.
Yeah. It's a very good point, because I'm going to jump all the way to the end quickly just to touch on the fact that...
There's no rules today?
Yeah, well, I mean, you did mention in the book that one of the reasons you wrote this book is to kind of improve your comparative output. And I think it's, fair to say it's a very, very smart move from broadening your scope of potential, future clients. But I also want to yes, that is one reason why you wrote the book, but clearly there's more behind why you wrote the book. And I'm interested to kind of understand how or when you kind of figured in your head that you needed to understand, introspectively redefine what it meant to be rich and why that was important.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I think the first major breakthrough that I had was the realization that a lot of my ideas were continuing to be shaped by the popular wisdom that I thought I had abandoned. And what I mean by that is the whole idea to this book came to me while I was out running, and it was a fucking hot day and I was mildly hungover. It was humid. I was having a terrible, terrible time. There was this unseasonal northerly wind. I clearly remember, and I really wasn't enjoying myself. So I had to go extra deep into my own brainwaves just as a distraction from the pain of endurance running. And I just asked myself this just innocent question. I'm like, Bryce, why are you rich and almost nobody else is? I know people that, had way bigger opportunities than I had growing up, and they've squandered them and they are regressing in every possible way. And I thought it was just going to be a fairly quick thought experiment, because I just play thought experiments on myself all the time while I'm running. But every single answer I came up with was wrong. I was like, okay, why are you rich? Like, why? What went right for you? Was it privilege? Were you given a head start, financially or otherwise? No. Okay. Did I have an elite education? No. I just went to a public school. It was reasonably rough. I had a great time, but it was just a pretty modest education. Did you fuck anybody over? Like, did you exploit a vulnerability in somebody else or somebody else's business and make money that way? Like, no, I didn't do that. All these suggestions that I was giving myself are the reasons that are offered by popular discourse to why some people are rich and some people are not. And I was just like, well, none of the conventional wisdom is answering this question. So then I decided to flip the question on its head, and I'm like, well, what about all the people I do know for a fact were privileged and were given a head start, that had elite educations and were given the regulation good start to life? And I reflected on these people. I'm like, nah, these people are squandering it, and they're regressing in every possible way. These head starts never helped anyone, not in my circles anyway. I'm sure they do in some in some cases, but they're with no real degree of correlation. And I was like, there's got to be more to that. And ultimately what I found, the more I ran, and it took several marathons of running to work this out, ultimately what makes very few people rich and the masses poor is nothing to do with anything in the external world. It's the stories they tell themselves. It's the ideas that they hold truest to their heart. And that opened up a much more interesting set of questions to ask myself. And I was just like, well, what ideas did I have to reject in order to change my story? And that's where the journey began for me. I was like, okay. And there's a lot more than 11 unpopular reasons why I'm rich, and most people are not. There's far more than that. I decided to focus on what I thought were the biggest reasons, the biggest dividers out there, the biggest red pills versus blue pills scenarios, wokeness being a classic example. I really sort of just tried to narrow in on these ideas, which I think are the most socially relevant.
Well, kudos for putting this together, and from my reading it really did come across as being honest. There was no kind of beating around the bush, there was no fluff. It was kind of, here's my story, here's what I've learnt. Take it and be rich, or leave it and be poor.
Exactly. Or challenge me. Like, if my greatest wish, because I'm making some pretty bold statements here. I'm basically saying, if you think this way, you're going to be poor, guaranteed. No ifs, buts, or maybes. You think this way, you're going to be poor. If you think this way, you're going to be rich. Those are pretty bold statements. And my biggest wish would be for someone to come along and say, I found some defects in that line of thinking. And I would like to have someone change my mind. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it will. I mean, or they may refine some of the ideas that I have without necessarily needing to change them or destroy them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can respect that your ideas have been well thought out, and they're presented in a way that is, as you read it, you kind of like, well, yeah, that just seems like common knowledge. But as you say, some of it goes directly against popular wisdom, which is kind of being posited left, right, and centre like these days. So,
well, there's the statistical element to it as well, because one thing I was baffled about when I did my research and my analysis, and I found that in the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom, that less than 1% of people in these countries are net investment millionaires. So less than 1 people have more than $1 million in net investment assets.
So we should just, I guess, clarify that is the financial aspect of your definition of rich.
That was where I started.
That's where you started, yeah.
That was where I started because, and you know, although richness goes far beyond money, money is the thing that we're all pursuing, that most men are trading their lives for, whether they like to admit it or not. So I started there, and I started there because it's very quantitative, and it's very shocking to me.
It is. I think your findings are very shocking.
Because as a financial planner, I know for a fact that you're going to need a lot more than $1 million in net investment assets to have a comfortable retirement. Yet, less than 1% of people in these rich countries have that. And I was just like, man, if these figures don't shock you, then they should, especially given that when you actually add up the amount of money that the average person makes in their lifetime, it's several $1 million. And people are just unable to even put a small fraction of that away, you know, for later. And then it sort of, that raises a few other questions. It's like, well, don't people care? Don't you, like, do you not care that you're going to be basically, there's a very high statistical likelihood that your golden years are going to be very lackluster, you know, and you know, so I sort of started there, and then it opened up so many more interesting discussion points, even though they were just internal discussion points with myself as I was suffering on the long haul, but interesting discussion points about, you know, like what kind of character are you if you are the kind of person that prioritizes your today impulses and desires over your, you know, future self, knowing that your future self will probably suffer as a result. So yeah, it just sort of this question, just unlocked this insane level of introspection that I've never had in my life before, and I just started jotting down these thoughts, and I was never intending on writing a book, but these thoughts ended up becoming sentences, and these sentences became paragraphs, and these paragraphs became chapters, and I sort of got, you know, 40,000 words into this scribbling, and I'm like, I think I'm writing a book.